Hi there. I'm going to show you today what I do to make fry bread. Things that you'll need. I prefer to use tongs. You can use things like spoons, slide spoons, or anything like that, even little basket things. You're going to need a pot with oil in it. I'm doing just a small pot right now and a little bit of oil. The oil is probably only an inch deep. When you're making fry bread, the size of your pot, the width of your pot, is what tells you how many pieces you can put out at a time. This only allows me to do one piece at a time. You need a plate with a napkin on it or some kind of paper toweling. This will help soak up all the extra grease. You see how I just dip my fingers in and now this is greasy? The fry bread, since it is bread that's fried, it's going to come out greasy. And then you need your dough. This is, an ancient Indian secret here. Really honestly, one great way you can do it, especially for beginners, is to thaw out frozen bread dough, let it rise. Once it's risen once, beat it down, and you can get going. You're going to heat your oil. I'm using my friend's gas stove, but you're going to heat your oil. If you've got one of the skillets that you're using, one of the larger skillets, it's electric, you want to heat it to over 220 degrees, usually 240, 260 is what I aim for. The hotter the oil, the faster the bread cooks. That's not always a good thing. The colder the oil, the slower it cooks, and that's almost always a bad thing. Because if it cooks for too long, it gets greasy. So what you're going to do is you're going to pick up your bread, you're going to pinch a piece of it off between your fingers. I just picked it up, I reached over and I pinched with my fingers, and then you've got a small piece. I'm not making a huge piece because I know the oil really isn't ready yet, but I'm going to show you how you're going to knead it out. You're going to put your fingers on it. So you're holding it in your fingers, you're going to put your thumbs on top in the middle. You notice that I dipped my finger in the oil to see, that's how I can tell the oil isn't that hot yet. I do this with very greasy hands because that way the dough doesn't stick to my fingers. You're going to reach in and you're going to slowly and gently pull from the center, and then you can pinch the outsides and stretch them as well. What you want to try to avoid are holes, but they do happen. And if you get holes, that means you're stretching it too thin. You can see that I've got a few areas where holes are going to start. If I pull it and you pull tighter. The oil isn't hot enough yet. Crank up the heat a little bit. What we would do from this point on, and we can do it with this piece, is you put the piece, you slowly lower it into the oil, and you let it go. If the oil is hot enough, what's going to happen is it's going to go down and it's going to pop right back up and it's going to start swelling up. Just like that. See how it's popping up? This means that the bread is cooking. Since it didn't pop all the way back up, we know that the oil isn't hot enough. I already know that the oil isn't hot enough. And you're going to let it cook. And you see how it bubbles all the way around and the holes it's bubbling through as well? That's a good thing. When we flip it over, you're going to want to see that the other side is a nice crispy brown. This is not a nice crispy brown because the oil isn't hot enough. The oil is quickly approaching that optimal temperature. Let the thing cook. Depending on how much air you have in your bread, will tell you how much bubbles you get. You want to make sure that my husband is making faces as he's recording and I can only barely see him because it's over my glasses. You want to make sure that you have, see, he distracted me. You want to make sure you have an easy way to get the fry bread out. You see this is all floppy and gross. This is not cooked. That's not edible. It's really disgusting. It's kind of pitiful. So we're going to do this again. My hands are oily. You can see how they shine. Nice and shiny. You're going to reach into your bread dough bowl. You're going to pinch a piece off. See, you can pinch it off with your hands. You're going to hold it in between your fingers and your thumbs. And you're going to gently stretch from the inside of the bread towards the outside. It's like if you make pizza, it's the same kind of way that you would start doing a hand-tossed pizza. The same kind of gentle stretching. One very, 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 very important fact. Do not overwork your dough. The more you play with it, the more you pull at it, the more you knead it if you're making fresh, brand new dough all on your own and not cheating and using frozen bread dough, is do not overwork the dough. If you overwork the dough, it's always going to be chewy. It's always going to be nasty. So we're going to slowly lower this in and see how hot the oil is. See, it's rising right up right away. You see you've got a nice air bubble starting right there. We're going to let it cook for a little bit. You can flip it over multiple times. I really only prefer to flip it once. So we're going to flip this, and we're going to watch, and you see how it's starting to rise up in other places. You can see how we've got a bubble starting right here. Bring the camera in so they can see how the bubble is starting right there. Okay. And now I can see on the very edge here that we're starting to get a golden brown on the bottom, but it's not brown enough. So I'm just going to wait just a second. Right here on the edge. How it's browning just a little bit. I'm going to wait a little bit longer. I'm going to flip it over. And we can do this one more time. The longer that the bread dough stays in the oil, the greasier the bread dough, the piece of fry bread is. So you don't want it to stay in the oil too long, because once it's in there for so long, it does get to the point where it is just a gross, manky, oily piece of slightly undercooked or slightly overcooked bread. You can overcook fry bread. It turns very dark brown. You can see we're getting almost the golden color. The oil isn't quite hot enough yet. If you have a thermometer, you can stick it in there and test the oil in multiple places, because depending on the kind of eye you're using, especially if you're using an electric eye, it's not always going to be uniformly cooked, uniformly heated oil unless you stir the oil up. So let's try this one last time to get you a good piece on file. You pull the dough up, you pinch it off with your finger, and then you knead it out. I'm going to show you from this side. See, kneading. I'm pulling. Show you from this side. See, pulling. And pulling and pulling and pulling. The bigger piece you pinch off, pulled it too much. The larger piece of fry bread you can get. You don't want any part of it to be too thick. If it's too thick, I usually pull it until it's about 1/4 inch thick. If you pull it too much, then you're gonna go, look how it's puffed up right away. I put it in the oil, it popped down, popped right back up. It's a nice big bubble on top, which means it's gonna have a nice hole right here, and then you see how it's swelling right up right away. That means we've got a lot of air in our bread, which is a good thing, because that makes the bread fluffy and crispy and crunchy and light, instead of soggy and chewy and thick and really hard to eat. We just let it cook until it's a little bit more brown on the other side. It's always good to flip it fairly quickly if you do notice the very first initial drop that you've got a big mound like that, because that center part that was mounded isn't actually in contact with the oil, so all you're doing is cooking the outside edge, and that's not always a good thing. Sometimes if you're feeling impatient, you can dunk it a little bit deeper. That's why I use tongs. It gives me a little bit more control over what I'm doing. And flip it this last time. Look at that beautiful color. We've got really great color on this piece. And don't be afraid to test it with a few pieces of bread dough. Usually when I start, I don't do with the really big pieces. I actually do like little pieces of fry bread that are only about that big. And that lets me test how hot the oil is. The center is still a little bit light, but it's going to be a really tasty piece. First piece of really good fry bread is done. And that's how you make fry bread.